benefit of everybody in the room, why don't we just go around the table and introduce ourselves? I'll start. I'm Catherine Richard. Another cup of coffee. I think my name's Catherine Richardson this morning. And who's on? I'm one of the co-chairs. And who's on the phone?
Good morning, Catherine. It's Donna Desiato. And thank you to Mayor Donovan for hosting this morning.
Always the politician, Donna. You're really great. Okay?
Right in your hometown.
And who else?
Good morning, Steve Ryan here from Los Carolina.
Great, Steve. Anybody else on the phone? All right.
Good morning, Sharon Allen, Community Center.
Good morning, Sharon. Okay, starting, so let's go around.
Gave me a chance to
Swallow your
my
donut, that's what I thought.
Neil Murphy, co-chair, also a friend.
Hi, Kat.
Thank you, Michelle.
Larry Bousquet from Dave Olstein. Dennis Natalie, British Reduced Labor Council.
Mark Olson, Village Mayors Association.
Joe Stefko from CGR.
Emmy Audi from Switzerland. Darlene Kerr, retired, Niagara Mohawk and Syracuse Chamber of Commerce.
Melanie Littlejohn, National Grid.
And Bill Byrne just walked in. We'll introduce him. Okay, without further ado, I want to thank, first of all, the mayor for having the beautiful lights up in the snow. It looks beautiful driving into your village this morning. I just missed the chimes, though. I'm really sorry I missed that. I think everybody knows the mayor has not only been the mayor of the village of Manoa, but he's the immediate past president of the New York State Association of Mayors, right? That's very recent, right?
Last year.
That's right, last year. So without further ado, tell us all about what you want to, and introduce us to the people you want us to meet here, too. Make sure you people that are all here, make sure you get donuts and whatever on your way out.
There's a joke on this side of the room about being brief. So.
Between Lisa and me, we're hoping.
Okay, I have the brief people behind.
That's right.
Good mayor, all right.
First of all, welcome to our village. We're very proud of our village as it is and our past. No secret, we grew up around the railroad tracks which divide our village, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But first off, I want to introduce these folks over here. First, my right hand, my confidant, my...
Could the mayor maybe get closer to the microphone?
Yeah,
All right.
just don't trip on the telephone wire there. Okay. The logistics in the room, Steve, he has to walk around it 3 times before he gets to the telephone, okay, so.
Click your heels.
No worries.
No, he's coming, and we'll accommodate this, except I get him away from my people who are gonna keep him brief.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Okay, good. Lisa Devona, my clerk treasurer. Next to her is my fire chief, Eric Shep. Tom Pettarelli, my DPW super, the guy that cleared the way for you so to get in safely, along with doing his crew, Mike Murnane and Jim Landry.
Welcome, guys.
These are the guys that hit the street every day. We kind of laugh about snowstorms that are projected. You know, it's like, yeah, okay, 6, 8, 10 inches, who cares? These are the guys that take care of that and do a great job. Want to introduce some of my colleagues that are here from Elbridge, Mayor Hank Dewar, Melius, Paul Worrell, Mayor of Liverpool, Gary White, and his deputy mayor, Mr. Cochin, and that's it. Okay, so I got to be brief. Mr. Cochin, how are you? We have 3,450 residents, roughly. Part of our survival has been that we've had 3 annexations in the last 10 years. And part of that is a 284 unit housing development, which unfortunately the builder just pulled out 3 months ago because of the economy in the local area. They not only pulled out of here, but pulled out of other places in the county. I have a staff of 14 that does everything. These guys over here that I just introduced in the DPW, one of the things that they did was design and built a salt shed. Saved us over $100,000. For those of you that think, we need to do things better, I think we do things pretty well, and I'll cover some of that, including this building. This building brought 3 buildings into one. Construction started in 2004. There's no granite in the building. There's some nice woodwork in the hallway to greet you, but no frills. We went from over 35,000 square feet down to 24 and change by building this building. With us came the library, which is right next door, which by law cannot be in this building. We worked very hard to get the legalities together so we could control the architecture and the structure. They actually bonded for that end of the building. They own it until such time as the bond's paid off, and then it'll be ours. The benefit to that, our own library. Didn't have to build hallways, an entrance, bathrooms, meeting rooms. They use our rooms, one of which you rent. This is a community room. There's one next door. There's another one going in that direction, which can also be used by the community. It's basically our training center for our emergency services and our EOC in the event of a disaster. All the area in this building is shared space. Codes and the historian and my trustees are in one office, not a big one. The chiefs share one office, fire chiefs. Same with the executive side of the fire department. There's very little freestanding file cabinets in this building. They're all built in underneath the desks. Gives us a nice work area, saves a lot of space. And if any of you would like to hang around afterwards, I'd love to give you a tour because this is a very efficient, well thought out building. And as Senator Hoffman said at the time, who was a big supporter of what we're doing, this is what every community should have. It makes sense. We house the courts, the village offices, obviously. We have our own ambulance service. Another story, we outsourced our staff and management to Waves Ambulance. Another shared service, if you will. It made sense. We didn't save any money. We got a much better service. We got a management staff, we got a backup staff to the regular crew. Again, another sharing of what we're all about here. We have a police substation, court systems in here. The police, by the way, is the town police force. Consolidated the 3 villages in the town, Manlius, Fayetteville, and Manoa. Consolidated in 1985 because it made sense, not because we were forced to. Okay? Fire department, we have on a roster about 64 men and women. About half of those are what we call active members. We're very fortunate to have those people because if we had to pay them, we're talking about $1 million right up front for minimum staffing. It's the lay of the land that we can't control. We protect 3,261 parcels outside of this village. You hear Fire Protection District. Lisa, can you grab me that map? I'll give them a quick visual. We protect all the way, for those of you that aren't familiar, I'll give you a little bit of a visual. We protect all the way from the canal in the south to Taft Road in the north. That's a pretty good chunk. Okay, this is our town. We protect basically from here all the way up to here. Okay? Quite a distance. And the big thing is this thing right here. If you're not familiar with it, I'd encourage you to go out, left out of here, turn right and then left, your first right and first left, and you'll go by CXX rail yard. Splits the village of East Syracuse and Manoa right in half. It's a disaster waiting to happen. We, the village of Manoa and the village of East Syracuse, are charged with protecting that. We get no money from anybody to do that. Just a little point.
We got it, Mayor.
DPW, street, sidewalks, anything that comes up, stormwater, drainage, all of that costs money. We don't have a rec department. Who does that? Village board, the mayor, in our spare time. With the assistance of our staff. Again, we're saving money. When we built the building, we couldn't build for senior citizens dedicated space. And the water, the water, please. We couldn't build for a food pantry, which we brought with us. So we had to play legal games. This became a community room, and there's the golden acres on the wall.
I felt very at home when I walked in here.
They have exclusive use of this room on Thursdays. If you want to play cards and eat, come on over on Thursday. They're here all day. The community has access to this room as well at any other time, but they're always here except for yesterday. They decided to take a snow day. I don't know why, but. We have about 150 lots left in that subdivision for growth. The important thing I want to make about villages in terms of growth and that sort of thing, we're nothing more than small cities. Dense population with infrastructure. You want to control suburban growth? Do it with your villages. We're important. You may have seen my ugly face on TV a couple days ago with Senator DeFrancisco. This state is in dire need of infrastructure investment. And congratulations to Rob and the job he did with regional development. That's good for our economy going forward. And you hear Mayor Minor talk all the time about all our water main breaks and all that sort of thing. You turn on the faucet and you don't get water, or you go to the bathroom and it don't go anywhere, you got a problem. We need support.
Just a question, on the infrastructure front. There were so many funds, it seems, that came out of the financial crisis in 2008. And, you read that many of those funds never really made it down to the local communities for this kind of infrastructure. Can you comment on whether your community received anything through that process, and if so, how you deployed those funds?
My state aid is $31,963. And that's all the help we get to do whatever.
So you never got anything for the infrastructure during?
Nothing.
Okay.
Zero. Any of us. Okay? We're pretty much standing on our own. The governor's made it very plain that he wants villages to go away, and I wish he was sitting at this table, I really do. Because with $31,000 in state aid, I can't even mobilize a project going by state rules. Okay? The cost of government is not at this level. And a good example of that's right behind Lisa. I brought it in just as an example. That pile sitting over there, okay? 2 feet of paperwork, binders, and whatever. Is a grant that we applied for in 2010. We just got a shovel in the ground about a month ago. It's $500,000, folks. We've already had an audit by a private contractor hired by the state to come in and audit that project. That person knows nothing about our project, came in, went through the plant, came in, had Lisa tied up for I don't know how many hours, making copies of that stuff, which Albany already has. I'm sorry. You want to talk about efficiency? Not our problem. I don't get excited.
And he's getting near to the end of his list. Lisa, okay, and, okay.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Perfect.
We also lost
It's in the
sales
genes.
tax money
DNA.
4 years ago. That was $250,000 cash that left out of a $3.2 million budget. That's a big chunk. Now we've gotten some of that back through the VIP program. We're about half of where we should be at this point. Okay? The county needed money, there's no question. There had to be a better way of doing that, working together. That didn't happen. Okay? CHIPS money, which is our road for roads, streets, $31,172.49. Just to give you a comparison, we did a sidewalk project this year. 5 foot wide to meet the new standard. I get for $14,825.75. I got 321 feet. It's just a little bit longer than this building. So you take that and you put that in a paving project? Are you kidding me? That's all the money we got. Manoa is all bedrooms, in case you hadn't noticed. Okay, very little commercial. Our big thing is that rail yard, which doesn't pay its way, doesn't help us protect them. Thank God we got mutual aid with Fayetteville and Manlius and East Syracuse and Bridgeport and Chenango. Because if anything goes wrong over there, it's going to be y'all come. And by the way, we have no heavy rescues
Yay.
in this town,
Yay for you.
okay?
Wow.
And I won't go down that road other than to say that.
Please listen.
We all work together on trying to figure out what equipment to buy when we buy it, so we're not duplicating our neighbor's department, and we complement each other. We need each other. I understand it's an expensive business. But if you want to make a metro, whatever fire department, it ain't gonna work, folks. One of the reasons for that is a comment that was made earlier. I had to drive all the way out to Manoa. There's distance, and that's why I brought in the map. It takes time. Fires don't wait for the truck to show up. In closing, tax cap, tax freeze. I call it tax squeeze. I got a cap, which has never been 2%. This year, it's 1.46, supposedly. Okay? We all get a sheet from the controller's office. Our cap this year is 1.0148, 1%, folks.
Wow.
So, if I raise my taxes 5 cents per thousand, I get $7,764. It keeps me just under the cap. Where am I going with $7,000? The problem's not here, folks. And when I say here, local government in general, okay? Somehow we gotta turn this bus around and look up, because they don't get it. And I was told by the good senator that they're potentially gonna get called back into special session any day now. And one of the things on the docket that will be in the fine print is gonna be a substantial pay raise for our assemblymen and our senators. And if that happens, I'm coming out of my boots. I'm sorry, okay? I appreciate everybody being here today. I wish you well. Please reach out to any and all of us for any information you need. We're an open book. And if anybody wants to hang around after, I'd be more than happy to give you a tour. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our innovative sewer plant and our partnership with this gentleman right here. SUNY SF in Village of Manoa have on paper a partnership, which this man was a very big part of. That's part of that grant that's sitting over there. We have proven to take pharmaceuticals out of water, all naturally, in our facility. And this grant will help us further that research. Dr. Desiato is on the phone. Another unofficial partnership. She is committed to K through 12 program. The day I mentioned it to her, I'm with you. We have interns from the high school in our plant every week doing research and development for us. 20 of them this year. They get college credit for that. They get real life experience from that. Now we have Chinango coming up here. First year for them. They got another 20 kids that are doing the same thing with us. Free labor for us, and these kids are sharp. I wish you could see these kids in action. And that's another tour. I'd love to have you come out after the snow goes away and see what we do. But it's important to know that we have all sorts of partnerships and agreements with a lot of people outside of the government that we work with every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. But you know what, Mayor, I want to tell you that it's been nothing but great cooperation with the mayors of all the villages and the town supervisors. We have been absolutely impressed in this process of how everybody has been open and been so cooperative, giving us good ideas. So thank you very much. It was really, and it will be nice going out again. Maybe, what time are your chimes? I'm gonna get those yet.
You may catch them on the hour.
Okay.
You probably won't hear them in here.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you very, very much. Just as a housekeeping thing, you'll notice that everybody, and if you don't have one, I see, we have a couple extra. Those notebooks for you are the stuff that just the general information. As far as the baseline report is, and if we adopt it, we will have it all bound for you as a separate document, so you have it. You'll get it very shortly, okay? Well, we're going to produce it as a bound with a spiral bound binding on it, okay, so that you can have it for all your work on it. But just thought as a notebook, as you got stuff, you can just throw it in there and you can keep track of all of that. Okay, I think what we'd like to do now is what's been exciting since our last meeting is 4 of the committees are up and running. Not only had their first meeting, but they've scheduled their second one. So we're going to start, and Bill, why don't we start with you with infrastructure, sort of give us what you did the first meeting and where you're going.
Yes, we met on December 2nd. We picked up some real nice committee members onto the infrastructure committee, including Mac McMurray from CNS, Vito Shisholi, who's I think basically retired, but you know, if you want to talk about infrastructure, right, one of those retirements, huh? In terms of infrastructure experience, I mean, he really is. He's going to be a great resource. Tom Taylor's joined our committee, who's former president of the JD School Board and an engineer from Carrier. And we had a good discussion. We essentially worked on scope, and The word is that we picked up the parks, okay, so we did the parks, so there's a big change. And then we just did a quick review of the baseline with Joe and talked about where we're headed in terms of, the first 3 months, well, we're going to, there's an information gathering period that we're going to go through, and that's really where we're at right now.
You got the water man with you.
Oh,
on
I'm
that
sorry,
committee.
you're right, I should, yeah,
Mr. Water.
yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Catherine, can we ask a question?
sure.
Do we have any thought on that committee of DPW superintendents from the town or the villages? Peter Shosholi doesn't speak for the villages of the town.
In terms of getting someone on the committee?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could get somebody, I mean, if I'm reading your committee, it talks about public works and highway services, and yet I
Sure.
don't see a DPW superintendent. They have an association. I don't see one of them on that
We
committee.
talked about that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
You did talk about that, you did talk about it, getting somebody
So if there's a recommendation that you give.
Where's Mark?
specific.
Mark, does the town have a highway suit? I mean, I don't know if the village,
We
do
do.
you guys have an association, or are you part of the towns, or are you part of the APWA?
No, the town association, or Onondaga County Superintendent Association.
And maybe a representative from that, Bill.
Isn't it the town of Clay superintendent is the president of the association?
Tom Manley is the
That's
president.
Rob
I think.
Cushing, right? Rob Cushing.
Yeah, Rob
from
is, I think, Tom Manley.
Manley.
Okay.
It just might be nice representation.
Good thought.
I think that was one of the, they just discussed it, they recognized they didn't have anybody, because you were talking about that when I was there.
Okay, we'll discuss that and see what we can do. Okay.
Any other suggestions for them? Okay, next one is municipal operations. Mrs. Audie?
We also met on December 2nd, and I want to say thank you to the members who joined that committee. And that includes Ann Rooney, thank you Ann, Mark, Scotra, Kathy Richardson, and Jim Walsh will be joining us, although he couldn't be at the first meeting. Joe was on the phone, and we had several of the staff who joined also. We began by actually reaffirming all the good that's happening in our community based on the baseline study that we see. And the fact that our challenge is not to reinvent everything that we do, but if we were given a clean slate, how would we begin today, given the changing realities of life? Then we began by clarifying actually what our committee is going to focus on, because there was a long list and there was a little overlapping. And we were very happy to give parks to my good friend Bill. But we did keep recreation. We are going to be very briefly, what our concentration is would be assessment, courts, recreation, library, clerk, receiver of taxes, zoning, planning and codes, social services, libraries, at the end also that we thought we would talk about. But we talked a fair amount actually about the committee structure. Should we invite others from the outside to sit through with us, or should we, given the nature of the people who are joining our committee, who have a sense of what is going on in the community, invite specialists to address the different topics we have? And our general consensus was that we will ask 2 or 3 speakers to come and address every subject. And then at the very end, we as a committee will write our report and we'll bring it to the consensus. So this is where we are in terms of our committee structure. We are, and we already started identifying those speakers. In fact, we have the speakers for the first meeting, which will be scheduled for the 17th, again at State. We're looking forward really to a very exciting time. I think there's a lot that goes on. There is a lot that is good. There is a lot that perhaps can stand some changing or reinventing in this case. But we're looking forward to our next meeting and to hearing our speakers address them. Thanks.
Great, okay. And our third committee is public safety. Darlene Kerr.
Thank you. And Catherine has joined our public safety committee meeting. Public safety includes fire and EMS, police, and corrections. We have broken this down into 2 separate subcommittees and have met already with the fire EMS committee. Now on that committee we have Chief Paul Inertz, who is the Syracuse fire chief and has been a career paid firefighter, but he's also served for 35 years as a volunteer in North Syracuse. And so he has done EMS work and fire, and currently is a trustee in North Syracuse. So he has very extensive experience on both unpaid and paid professional. We have former Fire Chief John Cowan from Syracuse Fire. We have our village mayor here, Mark Olson, who's fire chief, volunteer fire chief in Fayetteville. Pat Mannion, who's also a volunteer from Fayetteville. And we are currently looking for an EMS expert to round out the core of the committee. So this is the core of the committee, but we, at our first meeting, identified some experts that we need to speak to. Experts in 911 and the Office of Emergency Management of Onondaga County and EMS. So we're going to bring in experts and speak to them. We spent a fair amount of time in our meeting looking at the data, which everybody had questions and concerns about the data. So we decided that we would, Joe would go out and look at 2 other sources of data. So now we're going to have 3 sources of data on fire and EMS for all of the districts and throughout the county with EMS.
And you'll notice that in the redo of the draft, that some of that.
Yes, I did see that. I did see that, yep.
Some of it was in new stuff.
So anyway, data's going to be a struggle for us, validating the data that we have on response times and costs, but we also identified other data that we are going to need because we're taking the approach of a clean sheet of paper, looking at the entire county, and with a lot of different data. How would we redesign a system today to meet the population centers, to meet the needs, both EMS and fire and rescue and so forth, given all of the information that we have? And that's the approach that we're moving out on. And I welcome from any of you ideas, suggestions about experts or people who should be involved. Please, just call me, let me know. On the police side, we haven't yet organized that. I spoke with the mayor about who would be the best representative from Syracuse City Police. I'm going to be talking to the new sheriff about county, and then really like to know from some of you who have expertise who villages and towns and so forth would be the best, most forward-thinking, most objective, most experienced police representatives for a core committee, and who should we speak to as experts. So we'll be getting underway with that probably in another month, but we're off and running with fire.
Great.
Yes.
Sure.
Is there not a relationship between 9/11 and police and fire, though?
Yes.
Would it be important to have that police voice as you talk about the 9/11 system? Just asking a question.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. Good suggestion. Yep.
And I know New York State Police you're going to involve in
Yes,
the
yes.
helicopter issue, that's all part of your package?
The state helicopter or the county
Well, the
helicopter?
3 of them.
Yeah. Pick one. Absolutely.
The numbers part, I was glad to see
Yeah.
some of it. Joe and I were talking earlier. We just still need to nail down
We do.
the
We do.
EMS side because, Joe said the city's now right,
Mm-hmm.
but some of the villages like Manly's, Fayetteville, Manoa, it
Right.
doesn't show our ambulance calls, which is part of our budget, which I know other ambulances, so we gotta get that right because if it goes on a per call basis or, if you look at the budget and say, oh geez, they're only doing 600 calls when they're actually doing 3,000 calls. You can
Right.
skew the
Yeah.
number, so we
We
really need to nail
We need
that
to
down.
really grapple with this data. Yeah.
And it's 3 different sources, it's 911, it's, state EMS, it's state fire, it's,
I know.
Steve, talk about inefficiency, right there is one of them, We have 4 different places we have to report to.
Which is nuts.
State health, state
Right.
fire, state EMS, and county,
Nuts.
for one service.
And no consistent set of data across
No,
those
no, not the same
organizations.
report, there's different reporting systems for each one.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Can I add one thing I discovered when some of our folks came back from Erie County with their snowstorm? We ought to thank God we're not Erie County. They have 13 separate dispatchers for 911.
Wow.
And I think it'll be very interesting for your committee as you go through this, some of the lessons learned that we've already found out about this. They brought some of our folks and just how difficult it was communication-wise for what they had to do because of all these different entities in a major disaster like that, so.
Right.
Would
It'll
it be
be-
important to include Kevin Wise?
He's
Kevin
our
Wisely is our next speaker, and he'll become part of our core committee.
And Bill Wiley from 911, but
Right.
Kevin was
Yeah, they're
really
both-
the point person out there, but
Just
it was very, very interesting to hear, especially for
Interesting,
dispatch,
yeah.
when they were trying to deploy all these
Wow.
different resources and resources from different places, not just Erie County. It was, when he was telling me all this, I wouldn't let him get out of the chair. I was just so fascinated to hear, and then comparing it to what we have, so hats off to us.
Yes.
Good. Great. Okay, and Larry, economic development.
So we had our initial meeting, and we spent quite a lot of time talking about the scope of our committee. The scope is really divided into three categories: land use and planning, economic development, and permitting. We have a small committee, but we're very fortunate to have Andy Maxwell from SACPA and Bob Simpson from Southern State on the committee. We have a hole in the committee. We definitely need representation from the towns and villages, especially on the land use and planning side. We've had discussions with Randy Wolfman from MACNY. He's interested in participating in the committee, and we've also talked about the possibility of David Van Slyke from the Maxwell School, who is very helpful in the transition teams for the county executive on economic development, participating in our committee discussions. So we have a meeting scheduled for the 22nd at 2 o'clock. Dennis Akinade is on the committee, Andy Maxwell, Simpson, and we'd like to recruit somebody from the town and the village. Land use and planning.
Yeah, all you people, I hope your wheels are moving in your head thinking of people, because you're the experts that we're looking at to
At this
identify
point,
some
we're
of
trying
those
to get
people.
our arms around the area, especially on the land use and planning side, where it is the regulatory environment, boards, and that elected officials who are involved in those decisions, and understand it in the context of regional land use as well. There will also be a discussion of what's going on in the world of economic development.
Will you speak up, Larry? I think you're having trouble on the
Sure.
phone.
We have a very good model on the private-public partnership side with Center State, but we're going to also be getting a handle on what's going on within the governments on the economic development side, especially from the villages and town perspective. That's it.
Okay, very great. We have, Murph's been working very hard trying to get our, which one? The
Governance.
governance.
Steve and Donna. I
Yep.
see Donna's back, so.
Yes, Steve and Donna are on the phone. We're not gonna get off your backs. We're gonna be there to get you organized on it. And then, of course, we probably should have an update, even though you didn't put it on here, about public engagement, because that's the committee that's been working the hardest and the longest, but it's not on here, but they've been up and running for a long time. They almost forget that and not focus on them because they've been up and running so long. So Melanie, why don't you give us a little bit where you are right now?
Sure, and again, from my perspective, I've been absent a little bit in the last few
Okay.
weeks, last month, really. And a thank you to all of you. I've gotten so many thoughtful cards and everything, so certainly I appreciate that. Public engagement will kick off, will amp up our game in a major way. In my absence, there's been several meetings. One of the last meetings that I attended, and Joe, I sat in the back of the room just to get a sense, was the TR. And I think very good feedback, and it seems like there is a real need to see the data. And it's also very interesting as the baseline report was somewhat rolled out, the surprise. So I think we're going to be dealing with the surprise factor in particular over the next year, really, as we begin to engage the public. But what I will ask Murphin and Kevin in particular and Lori to do is if you could fill in any of the holes, because again, I've been,
Yeah, that's next on the, Kevin's next on the agenda. We filled them in, but I would just want to give you the opportunity to say where you were, because this committee really has been,
sure.
they have been up and running for quite a while.
Yeah, and we
Very
plan
active.
to meet, we're actually trying to put another meeting on the docket before the holidays really get kicked in, to kind of calibrate where we go next, because and it really depends on what we do with the baseline report today and the rollout.
Okay, so without further ado, it's a nice segue. Kevin, why don't you give us what's been going on in the presentations?
And with that,
You need to get here in front of the
guess I need to get in front of the
yes.
camera, I'm being
Right.
told. With that, we are, last evening picking up on some of the meetings.
Why don't
that-
you come down here closer so the people on the phone can hear a little? Great.
Picking up on some of the meetings that Melanie referenced, we had another meeting last evening. Joe gave a terrific presentation to more than 100 of the members of the business community at the Center State CEO Investor Meeting. It was incredibly well received, an awful lot of discussion that took place in a reception that we had going on afterwards, actually, and a lot of really good ideas and good response. So we were pleased with that. Our next big pieces for public engagement will depend on adoption and publication of the baseline report by the full commission here. Once we have that in place, we are prepared. We have drafts that are now put together for our media rollout. We're in contact with the Syracuse Media Group as well for another sit down with them. We had one about a month ago to really go through where we were to this point. We're also working on a series of meetings that will take place after the first of the year and engaging with some media partners who will help us spread the word on a broad level, really to really drum up, frankly, interest and support for those meetings. We feel like those will be a critical component in addition to our media presence in making sure that the community is not only aware but engaged with the work of the commission.
What arrangements do we have if we adopt this, our baseline today? What arrangements do we have as far as with the papers or the whatever it's called, Syracuse Media?
Syracuse Media Group, we have them basically on a short notice basis where they will be able to set up a meeting for us based on our schedule. They have been incredibly supportive. They have committed to not only putting something in their news, but on their editorial pages, and we are working with them on a regular feature that will be included on their opinion pages as well. We anticipate they're going to be a very good partner in this process based on the feedback.
Do they have the draft yet, embargoed?
They do not yet have the draft.
That was one of the things I know we were discussing, that's why I wanted to ask.
We were very
Right.
clear at that meeting.
Right.
That they could not have a draft until this commission actually approved it for this edition.
And I think the other point that we need to make as well, that when we in public engagement discussed the media component, we were very, very thorough in also identifying alternative media. So whether it's community newspapers, whether it's the Eagle, whether it's CNY Vision or CNY Latino, the list will be radio across the gamut. You know, our objective is to make sure we put our arms and you know, around all different levels of media.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about, just as long as we're talking about the presentations, we were thinking about doing presentations for the Common Council and for the County Ledge is a rollout. And then we decided, you know, that just sends the wrong message, even though they're both been totally supportive of us and everything. We really want the rollout being to the community, because as soon as you just do it just to the leadership, you're saying, okay, these are the only people that matter. So that we nix that, they will all get copies. They will all be emailed copies of the baseline, so they will have it in their possession, all the legislators. But we decided not to do that publicly because it just said, part of our community, you're not important enough. So to be a special invitation to an open meeting on it. So
in the meetings that we're planning, we are going to make sure they're geographically diverse, and while each meeting and every meeting will be open to anyone who wants to attend, that we will make a point of outreach to those who are closest to the geography of those particular meetings, including the leadership in those areas.
Okay, I'm going to ask B too, just to fill in here, because we started with TMR a year ago, and we followed up with Joe's presentation. Here's the sneak preview of some numbers that are make your eyes pop kind of thing. And how did that go? You and Neil did the
No, it was actually Joe and I.
Oh, it ended up being Joe. Oh, okay. Well, okay.
So I think it went well. People are anxious for the information, those that have had an interest in this topic for a very long time. There are a lot of data nerds at TMR, so they got right into it.
A lot of Joes there.
That's a very interesting concept.
But I think the community is ready, right? We made commitments, we're meeting our commitments, and now it's time to really delve, do the deeper dives into the data that we've collected. And if we keep meeting the appetite for this, I think we will have done our job.
Just one related thing, it's not on the agenda. Rob and Murph and myself had met with 5 principal foundations in central New York to get the resources that Melanie and her committee had identified would be necessary to really support the ongoing public education program. And those foundations were very, very supportive. And Murph has been following up and putting the proposals together to go into those foundations. And I think we've submitted now, is it 3?
4.
4.
So who have they gone to so far?
Everybody but Gifford.
That's
I don't believe it needs a formal application, so.
Okay.
So we're very
Because I sit on the Gifford board, and I don't think I had seen it. We have a meeting
Right.
this week, next week.
But we're very,
Okay.
very hopeful that this budget, I believe $170,000, that those foundations will come together as a partner to help provide those resources, Melanie, that you and your colleagues have identified as being required.
I just want to say thank you to Steve Meyer, if Steve's on the
Right.
phone, because
Yeah.
he and Welsh Allen and the Allen Foundation and Meg O'Connell really played the lead role in helping to bring those foundations together. So thank you, Steve.
All right. And Rob, I think that we expect to hear from all of them a yes or no by the first of the year.
Yes.
So that Melanie can plan, we'll have a good sense of planning going forward.
So
Glad that worked out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
just one more thing. I've done 2 presentations, public presentations already, and the first question in each one was, why not the schools?
That's right.
Yeah.
So whoever is doing these presentations, we have to have that answer nailed down nice and tight.
Yeah, well, that happened last night too.
Yeah, it just has to be a core part of the presentation before the question's even asked.
Yeah.
Okay. Joe, it just seems like you're just living here in Syracuse. And he did last night because he had a late presentation and an early one this morning. So Joe, tell us about our final baseline.
Well, put the word final in quotes.
Yes.
I always do with a report like this. I'll say at the outset that we did receive an updated budget from one of the local governments yesterday afternoon, so we're going to integrate that. We're waiting on an updated budget from one other, which right now there are some placeholders in the document. So to an extent, this is the final baseline document, but as this gets released to the community, particularly as it gets released on the website when the commission is ready to do that, I can envision over the coming weeks and months as new information becomes available and one town, one village, or the city or county sees an element in their data that they want to further explain, we'll routinely post data addendum, under the report released on, December 27th, and with a quick summary so that people can see the changes that have been made and the rationale for making those changes. So just so that we're all on the same page, that when this gets released, it still remains a living, breathing document to a degree. But first of all, I hope the revised baseline draft from October speaks for itself. We've highlighted all of the revisions in there.
Thank you so much for the highlighting that I didn't have to read it all through again.
I do want to thank the towns, the villages, the city, and the county. We had great communication with nearly all of them. We received formal either revisions to the numbers, additions, or in some cases you'll see textual changes where they actually wanted to add a footnote or an additional clarification point, which we've embedded right in their municipal profile. In most cases it was verbatim. Well, here's, you can't look at this number just on face value. There's some context that we want to make to readers, and here's what it is. So we worked collaboratively with anybody that was interested in doing that to make sure that that information was accurately and clearly conveyed in the revised draft. We did have, you'll see that not every municipality has revisions to their data. That doesn't mean that we didn't talk to them. There are some cases in municipalities in the community where, even though they had the opportunity, that we're assuming that the data are accurate because they didn't submit any revisions to us. But there were a handful of communities that either emailed our team or picked up the phone and called me directly and just wanted to be walked through the data. And in those cases, if a change wasn't made, they confirmed the accuracy of their data. So just because an edit's not made there, don't infer that there was no communication. That's not necessarily the case. So because some of the expenditure numbers changed slightly, and in the case of the county, there was a number, a couple of places after the decimal that changed, but a couple of places after decimal on a big spending base does drive some changes in your per capita numbers. So where you see changes in some of the per capita figures, it's a function of those changes that happened at the individual government level. The one substantive change in the service profile was already alluded to on the public safety data, and that is the fire response data. I'll say that we went from the county reported response data to the state reported response data, but there's still some noise in there, as we already talked about. One of the reasons for that noise is that certain agencies that have their own ambulance or EMS component don't have those EMS exclusive calls being captured in the data there. So that's one of the reasons why we're actually now working through the county to get the raw CAD data. When we look at the service volume data, we want to be able to stratify it by type of call, type of response, because that not only from a global standpoint helps us to quantify workload, but it allow us to say, well, workload in related to law enforcement calls, or workforce related to fire calls, or EMS only calls. So obviously those are critical data components, and we're going to continue working with the county to track down that information.
Joe, on the fire calls,
Yep.
the responses have all been changed, but not the response times. They're the same as they were. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The response time data, we're still using the county reported data there.
Yep.
The response volume,
Right.
the total response numbers are now drawn from the state fire reporting system. There was a discrepancy that the county reported numbers were depressed, and as we had a conversation with the Public Safety Committee a couple of weeks ago, when that issue was identified, we went to the state numbers as an interim solution. But again, there's no full solution here until we get the raw data and we're able to stratify it. And we'll confirm that with the individual agencies once we have that raw data.
And have the independent fire districts confirmed these numbers? This hasn't gone out to them,
This
right?
has gone out to the general purpose local governments, yeah.
So at the infrastructure meeting, there's a request for both outstanding debt and debt service, but that doesn't have to be in this report.
Correct.
But it's information the committee is going to need as
Absolutely.
as it goes.
Yeah, and that's an instructive point, Neil. So after the first round of meetings with each of the committees, I think every committee identified additional data that they wanted. In the case of public safety, it was, well, how are our emergency response apparatus distributed across the county? Can we get a map of fire station distribution throughout the county? Can we get the debt service? Can we get an inventory of the individual special service districts within towns? So those are all components that we're in the process of collecting. We've already gathered some of them, frankly. Those don't need to find their way into the baseline report here. They are getting into the weeds a little bit. They're going to be essential for the committee process. So we're still collecting data, but those wouldn't find their way into the baseline report.
Okay, so are we at a position now that we can say that we adopt this report so it gets the draft off of it, so it's ready for distribution? Does everybody feel comfortable with where we are?
I like the idea that Joe, with the caveat that Joe suggested, that this is
A living document,
Right.
right.
And this will change as additional
Yeah.
information is provided.
Can we put that legend someplace in it?
I was going to suggest you put that right on the cover, right on the first
Right.
inside page. We've done that in other projects like this, and it gets, before anybody gets into the real meat of the information, we're abundantly clear with them that, this is subject to change as we go forward.
I don't see this being fully completed until, as we approach the end of 2015.
Right.
But I think that's imperative for Melanie and Kevin.
Right.
Because the media is not gonna pick up on that.
Yeah, no, this is always, just from a public communication standpoint, when you release something that says draft on it, or release something that is subject to change, what you are inviting from the media, should they choose to go down that path, is for them to scrutinize, well, what are you going to change? And whether it's good or bad, that's what they will end up focusing on at some point in their coverage.
Well, right now, we can say we don't know what we're gonna change, is as we go forward in our committee work, more information will be.
The one concern I have based on what I've heard thus far is simply a question of how substantial, or if we have any sense of how substantial these fire and EMS discrepancies might be.
Well, I'll give you an example. The city fire last time, the city fire and the Village of Fayetteville's numbers were off. And Joe and I just talked, the city fire is right on now, and it's pretty close. I am 3,000 calls off. The Village of Monroe is off.
On
12
fire, Mark?
Yeah, because in
No,
the
on
city.
EMS.
No, on EMS, not
The
fire.
city is not, every time they go out on the EMS run, it's a fire run.
Right.
Every time I go out on a fire run, it's just a fire run.
Right.
But I have 3,000 calls. He has 1,200, he has 1,400. They're not reporting that. So if they look at this number, they're gonna go, what's going on in these villages? Why is it so expensive, or why are they going on that many calls? Why is their budget 1.4 and they only do 700 calls? So the numbers have gotta be, so I think you say preliminary draft, you say something else, but they're not right in here, and we know it
Well,
from the community.
and I think in this explanation, we should say that the fire numbers are not yet validated, that they are still being
Yeah, and EMS has to be
reviewed.
added or
Fire
something
and
like that.
EMS data.
The alternative is if you have one specific piece of data that people are not comfortable with, it doesn't have to be in the draft. It can be updated at a future point in time.
We haven't vetted the police numbers either yet. We don't know if the police numbers are right. I mean, I don't have a police chief to send it to. I could send it to him, from the town, but we don't know if they're right.
Did it go to the police chiefs in the town?
I don't know. If Mark sent it to the towns, I don't know.
So I
Joe,
think
okay, Joe, wait a minute. So what do you suggest, Joe, we do this? Because we really want a report out there. I mean, we've been telling everybody it's gonna be posted, so we gotta
the
do
concern
something.
about, sure. Well, the fire response numbers that we're talking about are under the header of fire in the report. So we're pretty explicit that we're reporting calls that fire departments respond to. Maybe what we need to do in that section, if it satisfies people's concerns, is provide in the narrative and maybe right in the header of that table that these are fire calls. These are calls that fire departments are responding to. In different jurisdictions, different agencies respond to different types of calls, right? As Mark just pointed out correctly, in the city, you have the fire department responding to fire calls and EMS calls, but because it's a true fire department response, they get reported as fire department responses. In the case of a village where we might have, where we have a separate ambulance department, ambulance agency that's responding to EMS calls, the EMS call line is not being captured in the fire. So maybe we can be clearer in the narrative around that table if that makes folks more comfortable.
I think that would be an
I think that's definitely, because it was something that committee, your public safety committee was right on. I mean, the fire chiefs were immediately on it, like, I mean, within seconds.
I just want to say, Joe, I think that I'm pretty positive that Commissioner Wisely intends to provide the CAD data at our meeting on Wednesday. Which may help clarify, if I understand the data correctly, that will help clarify this discrepancy in EMS calling? Is
Providing that
correct?
it's stratified by call type, yeah.
Is that correct? So I throw that out.
Well, when was your idea of releasing this report? You've scheduled a press release.
We haven't scheduled it externally, only internally
Okay.
with you.
Yeah, Larry?
My understanding is this is baseline data that's going to be supplemented through the committee process. So I think we need to get it out there, but I think the communication has to be that this is not the end, this is the beginning.
The way the committee's working.
That as additional information is developed through the committee process, that's going to be reported out as well. So it's, it'll supplement the information and make correct information.
Larry, my one concern with this is that we are talking about an area that is going to be a particular hot button issue.
Yeah.
We're talking
Fire and
about
police. Yeah.
public safety, fire and police.
Right.
Every reporter
Right.
who covers this is going to run straight to that part
So if
of
we
this
know
report.
that information is not 100% accurate and is going to be developed, we should say that in the
We
report.
have to say that.
I just, I maybe Wednesday is the day we're going to feel a little better about this, but right now, being 2,000-3,000 calls off potentially or something like that,
That's huge.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
That's a big deal in coverage.
My suggestion is that if we can get the information soon enough, that we include it. If we can't get the right information soon enough, then my suggestion is we leave whatever the column is and simply not have the information in the appropriate column. Because there's one thing about putting information in a draft, as a draft report, that maybe hasn't necessarily been reviewed by everybody, but we inherently don't feel as though that there's anything in error. But putting something in the draft that we're uncomfortable with, I don't think is appropriate at this point in time.
And
I
think
also
that-
think that your caveat on the cover, so in a fly sheet, maybe exactly as you described it, to me, would make me feel very much more comfortable in people understanding the context in which this baseline report is being.
Okay, we have two visitors that want to speak, yes.
Just one of the things, we have the Auburn transmission project, so we deal with the utilities. Anytime they have that, it's called placeholder. And that's, everybody knows something else is coming, and it's not, ignored, and you're not giving them false information, this thing could blow up.
Me too. Yes, Mayor.
Excuse me, I agree, and I think my experience with the press, they love
Kevin and
controversy. And I would hate to see misinformation out there, especially on this particular subject. It's very sensitive, not only sensitive to the public, but it's sensitive to the people that perform the service.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Darlene's really nervous.
She doesn't get nervous. No, she doesn't get nervous.
But I just noticed a tremor in her left hand, so I'm
With us addressing those two issues, are people, members of the commission, comfortable with the document that we have, with both the addition and the redaction for future edition? Are we comfortable with that?
Yeah, we've been telling too many people that it's coming next week that we cannot really, and so I think that's what the big issue is, are we comfortable approaching it that way? And Kevin, you're always gonna be nervous working with the press, so I'm not gonna worry about you being nervous too. Okay.
I must say,
Yes.
we have not as a committee had a chance to dig deeply into the municipal operations to see if there is a major discrepancy between the baseline report and any that they had. Joe, what is your sense on that?
My sense is that the data that are in the baseline report are reported by accurate, reputable sources. And they're the data that we rely on virtually every time we do a project like this. And I think, so I have great confidence in the data. I think some of the challenge here that we're talking about, fire workload data, is a function of the different types of calls that agencies respond to, which is why the city of Syracuse's data are right on, but we have some variation in other departments because EMS calls aren't captured. And I think the accuracy of the data is further validated by the fact that we received absolutely no significant change from any of the local governments. We certainly received clarifications that they wanted made in the report. But the feedback that we got from the county, the city, the towns, and the villages was that their data, certainly on the budgetary side, was pretty spot on. So the bottom line is, our team has a very high level of confidence in the information here. But again, to the extent that we go through this process and we want to add data, or we want to use a different data source, that's why I stressed at the very outset of my comments, the baseline document really should remain a living, breathing document. We're not putting a stake in the ground here and saying that we're not going to add to this, we're not going to revise this, we're not going to look at numbers from different data sources as we go forward. And you certainly see that already in the committee discussions.
Yes. And I think that's very important to have that, both for us as well as the public, that it is a living document.
Right, and really, the only one, I've been to all the committee meetings, the only one really was the fire and the EMS combination that screwed things up. It just, 3,000 is significant to anybody in his village or town that looks at those numbers and just says what it is. So we do need something to clarify what these numbers are. Yeah,
what's the I know you want to get this out. Who's rushing, or what's the push? Is it for the media? Is it for?
In the presentations we've made, we have been reasonably consistent saying that in December we've been working on this first phase, and we will have a first phase document that establishes basically the acceptable level of information under which then we begin our committee work and evaluating and that kind of thing. So I think we want to try and keep it at all possible to that schedule. So I think I would be very comfortable with going with the report if we just eliminate the EMS information, that we have the caveat both on the cover and maybe further described as the first fly page as we go into the report, saying this is a living document. And in the context of the words that Joe had described, I would be comfortable personally with the release of this. But I want to make sure that everybody around the table, and if everybody is, I would suggest that somebody on the commission put a motion on the floor that we can consider.
Is preliminary a bad word?
Yeah.
And Mayor Donovan said it.
Yeah.
From every elected official who meets with the media, and then they read the report or see the report, says, I didn't say that. And it's true. We don't say half of what they report what they want to report. And I'm sorry to call a spade, but that's what happens. This is not going to come out right.
All of us as a group
have to defend.
More comfortable they have preliminary, I would suggest we consider it the word preliminary.
I don't want to get it wrong. I think, and Murph and I have talked about this a million times, I think this is the actions and what this committee wants to do are a good thing for this whole thing. But I've gone through a study in 1985 for fire. Guess where it ended up? In the garbage, because the numbers were never vetted. And they spent thousands and thousands of dollars, and we never did anything with it because no one ever looked at the numbers and really went through it. So I don't want to put something out here and every person looks at it and says, there's another useless report because the numbers aren't right.
Mark, my understanding, I think what I hear, the bulk of your concerns are particularly around the fire and the EMS.
No.
It's around everything.
It's just saying, if we make a change, I want the media to understand that it's a living, breathing document. They don't get that. They report that whatever is in here, and Joe's right. I think the villages and the towns and everybody's gone through it, and they're good with everything else. But if there's something that changes, will they pick up on it? Say there's a report in here about the court system, and it changes. Will they go back and do a story, or will they go back and review that and say?
Honestly, no.
Then I don't think it should go out.
But there's nothing we can do.
Perception is reality, Rob. Perception is reality.
I get that, but we can't not put a body of work that for the most part is really strong, and we've all invested a lot of energy in out there. We can't be afraid of the fact that there might be something. Listen, we all make some measure of mistake, right? On the EMS and fire piece, I am totally in agreement. There's no way we should put out a piece of data that we know is not accurate. No way. So pull that page out and put a placeholder that says coming as soon as we're able to verify it, get the 95% of the work that everybody's had a chance to look at and the opportunity to vet. Let's get that out there. And if we have to change something, we'll change something and we'll communicate to the media and they'll choose to ignore it.
Well, they might,
It's just frustrating.
I know.
I know.
Listen,
The reality is,
we
you
don't
have to
see
deal,
it.
we have to deal with the inaccuracies and the phone calls and
Every
emails
day.
every day.
Well, what
Some
if-
people in this room don't understand.
yeah, but what if
Once you
we
start changing.
actually take that out and just say that that section's coming? So then they don't have any data to look at.
I think we have to
think you
be
need to do that.
transparent as to why we're having this dialogue in the first place, right? The reason why this is such angst, is creating such angst, is because there's 3 or 4 different data elements that, 3 or 4 different systems by which we pull data. That's inherently a big part of why we are all sitting here.
Right.
Right? So I think in the interest of being transparent, we can't pretend this is fixed, because it's not.
Yeah.
All right, and from a public engagement perspective, I'm not gonna stand up and say anything. It's broken, people. It's broke, right? So a big part of the reason why we did not include this data is because it's broke. And we want to get it right. And we're not going to give you information that's incorrect. Now, whether you want to report on it now or not, it's on you. But we want to give you information that is fundamentally correct. So this is the part that we've struggled with. This is the part that's soft. This is the part that's not making sense because we had to pull from 3 or 4 different data sources to get you clean data. In the interest of being transparent, in the interest of being upfront, we decided to hold out on this element, which we will share with the public as soon as we have enough confidence in the data. End of story.
I think Mark's suggestion is that there may be a few other things. I think a good piece in the beginning that, on a single page describes how we went about the process and that this is a living document. Having that kind of thing be the first page, I think will go more.
Yeah, but I'm hearing Mark also say that he's got to answer all those calls, or when it becomes the front page of the Post Standard on one of the days that they publish, because of those numbers, then isn't it better to take out, because we got one set of numbers and just take the number part out? There are 2 pieces.
Take out any data that we know is not accurate. Number one. And the second piece is we put in a fly page that describes the context in which this was being done and the fact it's a living document and that the data may change. It will not be final until the final report.
Here's what I would like to do, if possible, before we release this, and certainly before we put it up on the website, would be to make sure that in fact we are able to put that language together as staff. We'll work together with Joe, make sure we run it by the commission.
That's good.
And make sure everyone is comfortable with that language and exactly what we are going to essentially redact pending accurate information before we go further in releasing this.
I think that's the exact
That
way
way
we
to go.
should go.
And you know what, I mean, I want to defend Joe too. I mean, the numbers he has are accurate from one reporting system. The problem is what Melanie said, there are 3 or 4 reporting systems, and you can't make sense out of looking at all the numbers and come up with one nice set of numbers on it. And it might be that it ends up saying, this is what they report to the state, this is what they report to this is what the EMS reports. It might be multiple columns that it ends up being because we can't get one nice little number to do it. So.
And as Mel pointed out, frankly, this could in fact prove to be a very good example of the types of issues that we face. And we may choose to even point that out as a way to not only provide the media with an example, but also to exemplify or to portray what some of the challenges that all of our municipalities are facing.
I think I should mention too what our mission is right from the beginning. And that it is to analyze data and look at the accuracy of that. It's not our data that we're generating. We're not making these numbers up. We're looking at those numbers.
Right.
If that's clear, then I think we're safe. I really do.
But I think your approach, Kevin, is right, so that everybody's comfortable. Yeah.
What are we calling this report? What's the actual title for Mark's point?
Baseline.
What's the
Baseline.
name?
Baseline review.
Baseline review
Local
section
government in Onondaga County, New York, baseline review.
Objective number one.
That's what it's titled.
I think we've had a lot of good discussion. I think I get a sense we're in the same place now. Can I have a motion from a member of the commission?
You gonna restate it so everybody knows?
So we are going to, motion to approve the preliminary, what's the title of this?
Baseline review, section one.
Baseline
Wait,
review.
Joe, wait a minute, let's just, wait, he blinked when you used the word preliminary. You're saying we shouldn't use this, or we should?
No, I didn't blink.
Okay.
I may have.
I was watching you. Maybe it was just a
Lawyer at work over here, right?
I'm watching your
Joe, no more
expression.
blinking.
Do you think preliminary is a
Is that
mistake?
right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
With the understanding that we put a header on it that really explains some of the nuances of the data and the fact that this is a living document.
Right. And that will be transmitted to all members of the commission.
Prior to release.
Prior to the release.
Yeah.
There we go. So
Okay.
when, we'll put big urgent response needed.
Big
and the
emails
headline will
coming
do
your way.
something, So you'll know,
We
okay?
have a motion on the table.
Is there a second? Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, great.
You don't realize what
I know.
a big hurdle we just got.
That's right.
You know, what I sense, even more important, there's an awful lot of trust.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to maintain as we go through this process. Maintain that trust. Keep our ears open and have the honesty of people to say what's really in the bond. I want to thank everybody.
And I think we all can do it in a very collegial manner, which is very impressive to me. Murph, you have a few administrative items, nice and loud so the people on the phone can hear
Yes,
it.
well,
Maybe if you came up here and they could hear it on the phone too. Okay.
Jeez, how about him talk? I only have two quick ones. The first is our January and February meeting, which was in the email, January 23rd and February 26th, Laura? Right? Did I get it right?
It's on the agenda at the bottom.
Oh, sorry. Yes, 27th, sorry.
27.
Just to
Lori's
mark
the
your,
one that has trouble with the dates.
mark your calendar. And having to do with the release of the baseline, we will, when you have all signed off and everyone is in full agreement, and certainly not before that, it will be also distributed to the mayor, the county executive, the members of the county legislature, and the members of the common council, state senate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Town, village officials have seen section 2. They will see the entire report when it is released by the commission.
That's it?
Just so everybody knows that.
And you will be getting out the notebooks to the people who are on the phone
Yes.
and
Lori and I will get the notebooks either by mail or
delivering.
dropping off.
Okay. Anything for the good of the order? Your thoughts, that was last, I think we've heard your thoughts, so go ahead, Bill.
Thank you.
If you have a comment?
Yes.
You know, we've been focused on this report and just like from a strict business sense, what this data really is, it's like an income statement, really. You know, it's about money coming in and money going out. What's making me a little nervous is we're not really looking at what I would consider to be balance sheet items. Assets, liabilities, bonding, you know, we talked this morning about, you know, the bond for the library and the legal requirements that go around that. And for example, reserves, you know, what reserves do we have in the county? You know, obviously there's huge differences in terms of the assets and liabilities of the different, you know, government entities that are involved in Onondaga County. And I just wonder if just kind of like as a background note, I don't know how we really get at all that, and I know it's very difficult, but you know, there's a lot of legal ramifications related to, you know, what I would consider to be the balance sheet items of all these government entities. And do we really have our hands around that? And is that a barrier that we haven't even started to look at?
It's a big issue. And we've identified even the 143 water districts We need to know what the debt is being carried by those districts, what the service of that debt is. So I'm confident that as we go through the process, we're going to be teasing out that information in order for us to help us make some decisions, because that could be a very big barrier to doing some things.
Joe, do you have any comment in terms of just an
Yeah,
approach?
first of all, the critically important point, so I appreciate you raising it. Number one, from a financial asset, from a balance sheet standpoint, we have documented in the municipal profile section the current reserve status for every government in the county. So, and now granted, that's the tip of the iceberg, right? So it's just a high-level view of the financial assets at the end of the most recently completed fiscal year. But the capital, the physical assets, is another important piece. And my expectation was that, particularly as the infrastructure committee moves forward here, one of the things we're going to want to see, just as we're going to look at in public safety, right? What physical assets do we have in a county, and how are they distributed? You know, what's that kind of, what's the density of distribution across the county? So one of the questions I was asked at the first infrastructure committee meeting was, can we get a map that shows all of our public works and highway barns across the county? Well, naturally we can produce that, but the second level question is, now what assets do we have in those barns, right? You know, who's buying bulldozers, who's buying backhoes, who's buying plows, and are there opportunities there? So the simple answer is yes, we need to get to that level of data, and we're moving in that direction.
Very good point. Other things.
With the discussion on all the fire departments, I just want to make a public acknowledgement how grateful I am for all the fire departments.
Yes, we all are.
And how within 10 minutes, once when there was a call, 7 fire departments showed up and saved our factories. So I am grateful.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of things to be grateful for, I hope all of you have a wonderful holiday season with your families and friends.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you in the new year.
We've got a lot of great.
Or Monday.
Or Wednesday, or Thursday. Thanks a lot, everybody. It's been great.
Thank you, happy holidays.
Yeah, same to you, Donna. How's your niece?